recording, some of you are not. And so I did a really complicated drawing, but I wanted to do a really simple animation for you. And what I wanted to do is have daybreak come in. So I don't know if I've talked to you much about using transparent layers and different layers on top of things. But the first thing that I'm going to do for the first scene is I have a black bucket screen, and I have the opacity at 90%, so it's pretty dark. But I also want there to be kind of a blue tint, and I'll have to turn down the light so that you can see this correctly, because I can see it up on my screen, but it's not showing up really well for you all. And it is really pretty dark to begin with. That it's really dark, and I wanted a full moon, so I made an ellipse, and I put clouds over the top of it once I selected it, and then I also made a double of it, and I went into Gaussian blur. And I have moon in an earlier tutorial that shows how to do that. So that's going to be the first scene as it comes up. So I'm going to click Create a Frame Animation. If you haven't opened up your animation there, it's under Timeline, under Windows. So I'll click Create a Frame Animation, and that will be the very first frame. All of the whole scene is there, and the moon is there. So then for the next one, I'm going to go ahead and click a new frame, and then I'm going to turn off the first night and turn on the second one, which has a little bit less opacity. That opacity went from 90 to 70, and you see that just with that dark screen that it became a little bit more believable. And I'm not going to change the blue on that at all, but I am going to change the full moon to the partial moon. And so now I've taken my moon and I moved it down and I cut it off so it looked like it's going underneath the sky. And then I also then wanted the moonlight, so I add the blur of the moonlight as it's going down the mountain, and that will be cell number 2 of the animation. And then I'll click again, there's cell number 3, and one more time I go down and I turn off the black night and turn on night 3, so you see it's gradually getting lighter, and that opacity is at 39%. And this time I want to change the sky so it's just a little bit more bluer as daylight starts to come up and the moon's going down and the sun is coming up in the picture. And this time then I turn off the partial moon and put on the sliver of a moon, so it is almost all there, and I'll leave the moonlight on where it is. And that's the third cell. Then I'll add the fourth. And in the fourth cell, I have night 4. So this time, the opacity is down to 12%. It's even brighter. And then I'll go to the next sky and turn that sky off. So what's happening then with my color, that the black allows it to be more subdued, more like what daylight is coming up with. And then I don't even need the moonlight within this one. And then the next one coming up, the last frame here that I'm going to put in like this, I'll turn off the black. And then I'm going to turn on the next layer. And then I want to have my little rooster kind of stick his head out of the barn. So in order to do that, I made a copy of this edge of the building here. I selected it and copied it. So I could put a rooster behind it. And then down here, then I've made for tree, barn, rooster. Here's the rooster that I have. And all I have to do is get on the move tool. You may not want to move right because there's so much else going on. I may have to close some things that are in front of him, and or there he is. I just turn the door off, and I will just drag his head out just a little bit there, and I can turn that door back on, and that way, I'll zoom in so you can see. You can see he is just kind of coming out just a little. Whoops, that's the problem, that to have all the different layers so that you can still play with things. You can accidentally move things you don't want to move. So turn back off the door. I'm on my rooster. Let's turn him back just a little bit more. I want to see his head. And then turn on the door. And that's about all. And then I will add layer 1. It looks like I've moved it some. So I want to make sure I accidentally moved it. Then I moved it back over. And that would be the next frame of the animation. And then one more. And I could add a rooster crowing or wind blowing or whatever I want to this. One more, then I turn off the blue. And then I have my full bright day. And I can turn off my door and move the rooster out just a little bit more. So that he's standing in the yard there in front of the barn. All right, so I have all the cells made, and it's all at 0 seconds, so if I play the animation, it'll go really quite fast. So I'm going to click on the first one and the last one and collect the seconds, and let's try it at 1 second each, and I can play it. And that is basically it. It happened pretty fast. So I can play with it. I can have it loop. I can do other things. But that's probably the simplest thing that you could do with your animation is add some of those transparent screens over the top of what you've already made so that you can have time changing. And that could be much longer than a second if you wanted it to. That you could play with that. Questions? All right, have fun. I think that is it for this. A lot of you have already finished this one. So